Hello, Ray. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Sarah.
Happy New Year.
Yes, it is.
Yes, I'm so happy that we are in the new year. So, looking forward to a a fresh new start. It's always good to get a fresh new start. So, welcome everybody for uh, joining us. Thank you for watching, and feel free to put your comment in the comment. We can see you, we can see your comments. So at the end of the conversation, you can feel free to type in any question that you have for us, for Rick especially. So um, before we get started, let me introduce myself. um, my name is Sarah M. I am an author of the book How I Survived the Killing Fields. But today I'm not talking about this book. I'm talking, well, we are talking about the history. You will be amazed about this wonderful person in the history that started something amazing. So Rick is a storyteller and he's a historian. He loves history and he read so much about history, and he's going to share the story with us today. No, I'm sure you will be happy to know what is he talking about. So before Rick gets started, let me introduce him to you. Our presenter today is a 10-time non-fiction book author and an authority on American history. He spent most of his adult life living aboard boats and has traveled far and wide in the Americas. Let's welcome Rick Rhodes. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you, Sarah. Good day to you.
Yes, yes, so good to see you and Happy New Year to you. And and today we are talking about Clara Barton. So the description of her is just one line. It said, at a time of much national turmoil, she was the most welcome pioneer. So today you are going to talk about Clara Barton. Clara Barton found the American Red Cross and was most instrumental in getting the U.S. to join the Geneva Convention. Clara Barton pioneered the idea that humanitarian aid given for its own sake with no payback in mind is a most worthwhile endeavor. I can't wait to hear her story. Rick, so tell us.
I can't wait to tell it, Sarah, for you and everybody else. Clara was born on Christmas Day, 201 years ago, exactly on Christmas Day in Massachusetts. She was the fifth child of uh, Stephen and Sarah Barton, and Sarah was 38 years old when she had Clara. She thought she was done having children. So all her siblings were significantly older than her, 10 years older than her. And she felt like she said she had like six mothers and six fathers because all her brothers and sisters were a bit older than her. When she was 3 years old, her brothers and sisters taught her how to read, and her brother uh, David taught her how to ride a horse at a pretty young age. And she was pretty much a tomboy. And when she was 11 years old, David, they were working on the barn in Massachusetts, and he fell off the barn and got pretty badly hurt with internal injuries. And she spent, they were doing all kinds of stupid things like bloodletting and stuff like that. But eventually, David did get better, and Sarah was at his bedside for 2 years. And she felt
Wow.
very fulfilled doing that. And then when she turned 17, what's she going to do? What's the job available to women back in the 1840s or so? Teaching. Teaching was the only job available, and
Mhm.
she was just kind of a tomboy too. She was a pretty good athlete, so she played with some of the kids on the ground, the bigger kids, and she could play just as well as they could, like basketball or wherever they played back then. I don't know, but she could hold her own. She got the respect. Another time in class, when one boy was really unruly and taunting her, and she pulled out a riding whip and walloped him. And she was pretty shaken, and the boy was pretty shaken, but she never had any problems with that class again. And she became an excellent teacher, and said she had some of the best disciplined class in school. And she got mad one time when the mill workers' children were not allowed the same resources as the richer kids in town. And she made a big stink about that because she felt it wasn't fair. And made a big deal. So when she was about 30 years old, she moved from Massachusetts to Bordentown, New Jersey, to teach there. Started a free public school there, and it got huge. It really was a huge success. I think they had about 600 students. When it got that big, they said, "Clara, this school is such a success. We have to get a man to run it. You no longer can run it." And then she said, "Goodbye with teaching. I'm not doing this anymore." I mean, so then she moved to Washington D.C. and got a job with the patent office, and all men there, and they treated her pretty badly. They blew cigarette smoke in her face, and one even spat tobacco juice on her. And they cut her pay, and she had a rough time there. And her mentor there eventually left, so she couldn't do anything more than that. And then in 1861, the Civil War was started, and the Union doctors they didn't have all they had was basically real primitive tools, scalpels, scissors, and liquor. And the women were never allowed near armies, just for various reasons. And many soldiers were dying in the earliest year of the Civil War because they just couldn't get basic medical treatment, and she knew that. And it was handled by the U.S. Sanitary Commission, and they were pretty 1,000 volunteers. They were very poorly trained. And Clara, and another reason Clara also didn't get along well with the patent office is she was kind of outspoken on her views on slavery, and that didn't sit well in Washington, D.C. in 1856. So she wanted to do something for the Union cause. She was a Unionist, and she wanted to get her father's blessing. Now, her father was a soldier himself in the Indian Wars, and he fought out back in Michigan he was on his deathbed in 1862, and he asked, and Clara went to see her and said, "Dad, can I do something for the Union cause?" And he knew she wanted to do something in the nursing realm of things, and he said to her, "I know soldiers. They will respect you and your errand. Go ahead, Clara, do it." And the day of his funeral, the Surgeon General of the U.S. Army, William Hammond, said, "You have permission to go to the battlefields and take care and do things with troops." And she went to 16 battlefields, and she saw all kinds of action, horrible things. And she had no qualms treating Southern soldiers, too, who were badly wounded. She was she started at Cedar Mountain, Second Bull Run, Antietam, Fredericksburg, Wilderness, and several other battles. She was often in harm's way and nursing wounded by candlelight, getting by with 3 hours of sleep. One time, an artillery shell tore away part of her dress, and to grateful soldiers, she was named the angel of the battlefield. At Antietam, she arrived at Antietam, and the surgeons there were dressing wounds with corn husk or whatever. The outside, they didn't have any bandages, and Sarah's wagon came with all kinds of stuff, and they helped them. And she was really a blessing. And one man, a wounded soldier, Union soldier, had a ball in his cheek, and she asked her to pull it out, and she said, "I can't do that. I'm not equipped to do that, but please do it. I don't care if you recognize," and he was in a lot of pain, and she took her pocket knife and pulled it out, and he was very grateful. She was successful at that. Near the end of the Civil War, 1864, Benjamin Butler placed her in charge of all the uh, hospital units in the battlefield, and she also realized that her nursing, well before this, she realized that her nursing wagon had to be near the front. Before it was always at the bed. We'll put that at the back. And she said, "We have to put this right behind the first guns to treat the soldiers who are going to get injured very early." And they did that. One time, a bunch of Teamsters, she was getting more and more notoriety. And one time, a bunch of Teamsters were giving her a hard time, saying, "We're not doing this. We're not listening to a woman. We're not, blah, blah, blah." And she said, "You're going to do it. You're going to do it." And they were giving her a hard time. Evening came. She made a nice meal for them, and they melted. And they said, "Oh gosh, we're sorry the way we behaved. We won't do it again." And they did. It's a very good way to work things, and she very successful. As the Civil War was winding down, President Lincoln, I think, gave his second best speech, his second inaugural address. His best speech was 4 months after the Battle of Gettysburg, dedicating the Gettysburg Cemetery. But his second inaugural address, I will repeat a little bit of it here. With malice toward none, with charity for all, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, and to care for him who have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan. And that President Lincoln said, "Clara Barton, there's a bunch of missing soldiers out there because you find out where they are. Families are writing me thousands of letters coming into the White House every day." And Lincoln was real good about that, answering letters. So he put Clara Barton onto that task. But within weeks, he was assassinated, and the government interest wasn't as strong as it was after he was gone to do that. Nonetheless, she continued for 4 years, and she found 22,000 soldiers, including 13,000 in a place called Andersonville, Georgia. It was a POW camp. I was there, actually. I had to go there, and it was an interesting feeling. And the work left her spent. She spent 4 years on this, and she found 22,000 soldiers. And she was on a speaking circuit with such people as Mark Twain and Ralph Waldo Emerson. And between 1867 and 68, she gave like 300 lectures trying to raise money for her cause. And this work left. One time, she lost her voice in one of these speeches, and she was just ill spent. And they said, "Well, Claire, why don't you go to Europe and take some time off and just relax in Geneva or wherever the heck you want to go?" So she goes to Europe. And what's she do in Europe? Well, there's a war going on between France and Germany, Franco-Prussian War, and she's getting involved in that. And she notices something called the International Red Cross, and she noticed something called the Geneva Convention, and she got involved in that all over. The Red Cross, incidentally, the country that did a lot of support, had a lot of meetings for the Red Cross, was Switzerland. Their flag is a white cross on a red background. So they said the Red Cross will just be the reverse of that, a red cross on a white background. That's how the Red Cross is, just the inverse of the Swiss flag. And then she learned about the Geneva Convention and how this is how you treat wounded soldiers after they're caught. And it was really a good idea. And it had like 31 signatories in late 1860s. And she came back and she said, "America, why don't you join us?" 31 signatories, but her health wasn't too well, and she had to go back to a sanitarium in Western New York. And she found the obstacles to the United States was ignorance by the bureaucrats. She thought it was a convention was really a humanitarian treaty, nothing more than that. And they wouldn't, people would not join the Geneva Convention or the Red Cross. The first president was Rutherford B. Hayes, and he said, it's not, blow her away, don't ignore her. It's not. And then she just waved him out. And the next president was James Garfield, and he saw this. He said, "Yeah, this is a good idea. Let's do it." But he was soon assassinated. And the next president was Chester Arthur, and he said, "Yes, this is a good idea. Let's get the American Red Cross going, and let's get the Geneva Convention rolling too." And they did that, thanks to Clara's push. And not a lot of headlines were made when that happened, but it was a very good thing. And we were not one of the first ones in the Geneva Convention at all. We were at least number 32, maybe later than that. But it was a very good thing. It was an operation for where the Red Cross could operate in wartime. You wore a Red Cross and you go in a war zone, and you could help the wounded on either side if your vehicle had a Red Cross on it. And that was the idea. But it also did a lot of things outside of wartime too. In 1884, it was the Red Cross was on the scene when the Mississippi and Ohio rivers flooded. A couple of years later, there was a famine in Texas, and the Red Cross was there. There was an earthquake in California, a tornado in Illinois. In 1888, right here in Florida, there was a yellow fever epidemic in Jacksonville, and the Red Cross was on the scene there. The next year, the Johnstown flood, I think the fourth largest national disaster in the United States, 1889. And I think, what's the number here? 2,200 people were killed. They don't even know the exact number. And the Red Cross was there. In 1900, the Galveston flood, which is one of the, I think, a really bigger thing. Red Cross was there. It was doing all kinds of things in the United States, and beyond that, it it things overseas. And Clara Barton came back, and she was an outspoken for women's rights. She said, "Look, I'm advising presidents and senators, and I can't even vote. Come on." And she was on a speaking circuit talking about that, rightfully so. Well ahead of, I think that actually happened with the 19th Amendment in 1900 something. I mean, Clara Barton had already passed away by then, but she was very outspoken for that in 1800, late 1800s, early 1900s. And in 1896, there was a thousands of Armenians were being, oh gosh, murdered by Ottoman Turks, and she got involved in that. The Red Cross went over there, and then also the Spanish-American War was happening about the same time, and the Red Cross was on the scene there, and she just did all kinds of wonderful things. In her latter years, there was some friction with the Red Cross in management. I think she had an issue. She was spending a lot of her own money. You call that commingling your funds if you're a small business person, and then some people were out there. It's like jealous of her and that. But she gave up the Red Cross in 1904. Well, she gave up management. She was 83 years old in 1904, and she gave up management because of all the mucky muck going on with the bureaucracy of the Red Cross. And on her deathbed in 1912, this is great. I have to read it. She opened her eyes and said, "I saw that as it is on the battlefield. I saw surgeons coming too much to give any special treatment to any one person. I crept around once more, trying to give them at least a drink of water to cool their parched lip. I heard them at last speak of their mothers and their wives and sweethearts, but never a murmur of complaint." 2 days after her death, one newspaper said she was the perfect incarnation of mercy that the modern world has ever seen. I can't disagree. She did all kinds of wonderful things. And today, the Red Cross is still doing wonderful things. You know,
Yes.
it pioneered, like you said in the beginning, humanitarian aid given for its own sake with no payback, and mine was a worthwhile endeavor. There's other similar organizations that have taken their cue, like Save the Children, Oxfam Care, Doctors Without Borders, and even look at this guy, Jose Andreas, uh, Central World Kitchen. He's doing some good stuff too. All this stuff is really good stuff. And Clara Barton was one of the early pioneers doing this, and she doesn't get her due that I think she really deserves. I mean, so it's just a wonderful story about Clara Barton, and more people want to know about it. And she did a lot of great stuff. She's an American pioneer in a field that people often do overlook. All right, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome. So I run your website across the screen, and I have a few questions for you, Rick.
Sure.
So, did Clara Barton's early life in any way prepare her for the hero to come?
Probably, yeah. I mean, she's her brothers. On one hand, her brothers and sisters helped her. They helped her mature. She could read by the time she was a very young girl. She was good with horses. She did her older brothers and sisters helped her a lot. And then she had a lot of setbacks trying to, in the man's world, getting spit on in Washington, D.C., and Teamsters giving her a hard time. Yeah, she had adversity mixed with the right amount of encouragement from her family. I think it was a helpful to her. Those two things mixed together at the right amount. I would say yes.
Hmm. What do you especially like about Clara Barton?
Uh, well, what she did, she was just a real pioneer in a time when no who who thinks of soldiers and who thinks of them dead soldiers on the battlefield. And her father was a soldier himself, and he had some pretty harrowing experiences. And she looked beyond herself. She looked beyond her needs and took care of other people. And even though she was, dumped on a lot of times in that school in New Jersey when she was left away and other things else, and she continued on with that. She had a lot of perseverance. She lived to be 90 years old. She had
Hmm.
a lot of health problems.
Yeah. She's courageous from my view. So, what lesson can we draw today from Clara Barton's life?
Well, perseverance and looking for what you're supposed to do with your life. And she saw it, and I think that's it. And I'm gonna tell you another story. I don't know if I have this as a question, but how did I ever get interested in Clara Barton? And my mother, when we lived outside Washington D.C., outside the D.C. Beltway, there's a place called Glen Echo, Maryland, and it was Clara Barton and the Red Cross started. It's still there today. I think it's a museum, and I wanted to see that. And my mother said, "Who's?" I said, "Who's Clara Barton?" My mother, who was a naturalized Canadian, naturalized American, thought she really wanted to see her. And then years later, oh, I'm working for the government and doing international trade work, and I go to Baltimore Inner Harbor, and I stepped on a ship, and there was NOAA Corps officers, and I thought, man, this is what I want to do. I was on the boats, and I couldn't do it because my eyesight was not too well, and I needed the thing, but I wanted to, do get on boats. And the name of the boat was the Clara Barton. And I go, well, there's something here. I got it's just too much. So I have to talk about Clara Barton, and I just love her. So anyway,
Awesome. And yeah, Keith say hello. Very interesting. Didn't know most of that about Clara.
good.
Keith Road, you know him.
I think I do. Yeah, I think he might be my brother. Yeah,
Okay. So we'll see if anybody else have any question. While waiting, I'm going to share the picture.
sure.
Share the picture of Clara Barton. I think I have her picture. Okay, here it is. This is her picture.
Yeah,
Very
when she
nice.
was doing
Yeah.
that Civil War stuff, she was 40 years old when she started. That's her probably around the Civil War time. There's several
Mm,
pictures of her, but she was no spring chicken when she was doing that Civil War work.
yeah.
That's about her name.
Uh huh. Okay. I'm going to show your banner so people know what about you, know a little bit more about you. So this is Rick's banner. Um, the book that he wrote, the number 10 book he wrote is They Made America Great. It's right on the banner.
And the Clara Barton story is in there.
Awesome. Yep. There's a 31 interesting, amazing story in that book. So I hope you can get a copy for yourself, the viewer. So let's see. Get another comment. Face. So
I'll be happy
not
to entertain questions. Yes.
yeah, no question. Just say nice. That's from another Facebook viewer. We'll wait a few more minutes if to see if we have any more question, and I'm going to share another website. Both Rick and I, we are a member of Bay Area Professional Writers Guild. That's how we know each other. And this is the website for Bay Area Professional Writers Guild. And we help people who love to write to succeed. Whether you want to write the book, whether you want to write the article for a living or become a freelance writer, whatever your passion, we have we will support you in our organization.
And Sarah's our president, and I'm a past treasurer.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah. So I think it's a wonderful organization. We support people who love to write. And if no other question, we are going to wrap up. And we use 25 minutes and appreciate our viewer, thank you for joining us. And the next episode will be 2 weeks from today. We share on the first and the third Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
And that
So
will, yeah, and that will probably be Martin Luther King Jr. That's his birth. That's his day. So we'll talk about him. I can dig up some stuff on him.
yeah, that will be good, right? It's a good timing. So anyway, I want to thank you everybody for watching us, and let uh, tell other people if you like to learn to hear about amazing things that people in the past have done, paved the way for us to live a prosperous life. I come from another country, and when I see, America, how we have here, I appreciate everything. So, but if you never live in another country, you probably cannot tell. But I do. I appreciate everything that our, our heroes in the past have paved the way for us. So I thank Rick for sharing the wonderful story. Every time we come on, he always have a new, exciting, interesting story. So look forward to have you back in 2 weeks. So in the meantime, please spread the word and tell other people to come and join you to watch us. So with that, thank you, Rick, for being here for a good story again to share with us. And everybody, have a wonderful day. Happy New Year to you all. Happy New Year, Rick.
Happy New Year.
Yep, bye.
Bye bye.